Welcome back to Edge Work, presented by FanDuel as part of the Hammer Betting Network for a special Four Nation Frenzy edition of Edge Work here. After a day off yesterday, we are back to talk about this tournament. I'm joined here by So Money and Matt Alber. I'll start with you, So Money. How are you feeling about this tournament? No NHL games for the next 2 weeks. Is your interest level peaked a little bit here? Is it starting to get going a little bit for this tournament, or you couldn't really care less?
No, I'm ready to go. I think that what ended up happening is that the couple months prior to the tournament, I wasn't really feeling it. Like it just wasn't registering on my radar. But as we're getting closer now, and as I've done my work on it and looked into these teams, yeah, I'm getting excited. I think it's going to be it always sucks when you don't have the Russians there or like the Czechs and stuff, and like I get it, but we have these 4 teams here, and I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, definitely not the full feel of like an Olympic tournament with like, all the teams that you'd want to see there. Even like Germany, Switzerland, teams like that would be great to have there. But it's a little teaser for the Olympics next year. I'm starting to get a little bit excited. Alber, are you excited here or what? Or is your American patriotism letting you down?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, don't really care that much as of yet. I'm kind of hoping that once it starts, it actually ends up being pretty cool. But the phrase I've been using so far with a few other people is glorified exhibition. That's, as of now, how I view it. Maybe it'll change once the games get going. I hope it does, because otherwise I'm going to be bored off my ass for the next 2 weeks. But we'll see.
What a great attitude. Let's go.
You know what? I think if I were American, I wouldn't be as excited for this tournament either.
No, it's not.
You know what?
It's not an American. No, stop. It's not an American thing. You know what? I've had to watch this fucking Ranger team for the last 4 months. I need a break from hockey.
Well, you're not getting a break because the 2 worst players on this U.S. team are Trocheck and Kreider. So you're not getting a break from the Rangers or from trying to cheer on these Rangers players. You know what would get you jacked up for this tournament, and what has now got me jacked up for this tournament, because I was kind of on the fence and like gonna miss the NHL, still in NHL mode. I'm just like, oh, hopefully we get trades. Did my like in-depth, diving in over the weekend for this stuff, and what got me fired up was just absolutely unloading on Canada to win it all. I am unloaded, and spoiler. I mean, we're gonna get into predictions and all this stuff later. I am loaded up on Canada at our friends at FanDuel and everywhere. A lot of places. I am very loaded up on Canada. I'm very high on this Canada team. I can't wait to talk about why Canada is still the greatest hockey country in the world, and make Alber sit through that as we discuss that in depth. So we will get to that at one point. There are a ton of markets up on FanDuel that we'll look at a little bit too. Definitely a lot of stuff to get to here as we preview this tournament. We preview game by game, futures markets, player markets, all that sort of stuff. We will get into it all. But first, it is FanDuel's February Frenzy. Bet 4 nations face-off, NBA All-Star, college basketball, and so much more all in one place. On the ice, make the most of 4 nations with team point and goal leaders, anytime goal scorers, and live same-game parlays for each classic rivalry. Plus, find unique markets on all of your favorite events. Right now, new customers can kick off the season with $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Make every NHL watching experience more with FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook. Please play responsibly. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC, or 19 plus and physically located in Ontario. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-866-531-2600. 1-866-531-2600. Visit connexontario.ca. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right.
Oh, well done.
That was maybe the best it'll ever be. It just peaked. All right, let's get to this tournament here. We can start with just like going team to team quickly before we get into like the individual games. But honestly, like we can jump around here. Like we can start by talking about, we'll start with Finland. We'll go to Sweden. We'll go to the US. We'll build our way from the bottom to the top here. And if you want to jump in by talking about like, oh, I want to target this team in this game, whatever. Let's just have fun with this. We will start with Finland though, who have been railroaded by injuries, unfortunately. Not the full-strength Finland team that we would have expected. Their blue line especially has been hit with cluster injuries. A significant amount of top-end talent has been lost from that blue line, and they're now trotting out guys like, Välimäki, Vakanainen, Jokiharju. They had to call up Mantipalo. It is rough on that blue line, but still, like, a feisty group, a team that always seems to show up at these tournaments. A lot of national pride there. How are we feeling about this Sweden team, so many?
Finland, right?
Sorry, yeah, Finland.
Yeah. No,
in a few days, and I'm all rusty now.
Yeah, no, you've touched on the injuries, and I look at that back end. That's not even an NHL defensive core right now. They're decimated by injuries. But what I do like about Finland is their bottom six, right? You look at the depth in that bottom six. You have Roope Hintz, who's going to be playing as your third line center, right? That's outstanding. So while of course they're not going to be able to necessarily keep up with like the Americans and the Canadians, and they're going to be pressured on their back end. The way that they play. And I think that they can make it feisty enough where they can, especially against the Swedes, where they can probably steal a game. Now, it's going to be tough for them, especially if UC Saros continues to play as he's doing in the NHL. But I think one thing we have to be careful of is translating what we see in the NHL over to a tournament like this, where you do see guys step up on the big stage. So I think in the end, Finland will have a tough time keeping up. I don't think that you can. It is a short tournament, but I don't think you can last with this defense and then expect Saros to keep stealing games for you. So it's going to be tough for them. In the end, they are the fourth best team in this tournament out of a 4-team field. But if you're not careful on them, I think that they have the ability to tighten up games. They have the ability to kind of, I don't really see it against Canada, but definitely against the Swedes and against the Americans. I think that they can possibly surprise.
Alber, you think Finland can surprise here with one of the hottest players, Capo Kakko, in their ranks here, former Ranger that's just playing his best hockey now that he got out of that cesspool that is MSG.
Former Ranger and current Ranger, Earl Vakanainen, who's somehow on this team now. No, and I don't think it's really a hot take to say that Finland's far and away the worst team here. I think we already got a few comments in the chat of like people wanting to go full fade on this team. I tend to agree on that. I do agree, like their strength is definitely kind of their depth down the middle. Like, yeah, Hintz and Lundell is your bottom two centers. Like, that's really solid. Problem is they're just so weak everywhere else compared to everybody else. And like, you even kind of look at it with Saros, like, I don't know if you necessarily trust that he's going to be kind of in peak form here. So, yeah, I still think Finland's far and away the worst team. Whether they're kind of feisty enough to take a game, that we'll kind of see, because they do still have some very elite top-end forwards that may be able to help them steal a game, but it does go downhill quick after that for them.
Yeah, it sucks. I would have liked to see this Finland team with their defense intact, because if they had Miro back there to log, like 30 minutes, I think this team looks very different, especially with him playing like with Lindell in the back end. What I'm interested to see, there's a couple things here where like, are they able to get offense out of Patrick Laine? Not that he's necessarily a difference maker, but like if he plays like he has with the Habs right now, then this team might be screwed, because their forward group is their strength, and they're going to need everyone to pull their weight. We know the bottom six is very, very good. Like that Luosterainen, Lundell, Armia line will be a very feisty fourth line, a tough line to play against. At least you're going to get the effort from them. Kakko, Hintz, and Granlund, very good. Obviously, Rantanen and Aho Lekanen should be a feisty line that could provide offense and, responsible in their own end. If that top line with Barkov and Teravainen is sewered by Laine, which is very possible, then I think it could get ugly for them. I don't think they end with 0 points though. Like, I still think that they're good enough here where they're gonna be some games where there's gonna be, maybe they're gonna get steamed the other way and stuff, and we're gonna get like some bigger plus money prices on there, even like they're +1.5. So I think there's gonna be a little bit of value on them in spots like that in this tournament. I am curious to see how the goaltending holds up though, because this is a team that always has, like, you look back at like Mika Kiprasov, Tuukka Rask, like Rene, they've always had great goalies. This maybe feels like the weakest it's been. Saros is obviously very good, but like he has not been the Jussi Saros that we're used to seeing in a while. And I think that could be a real problem for them, especially playing behind that blue line. So I love the forward group. It's a shame they're not, accompanied by a stronger and healthier decor. I do think they're the worst team in this tournament, but I think the margins are still fine enough where like they're going to make it difficult and they're going to put in a good showing. So I think maybe some value on this team for sure as we get into these round robin games. We'll move on here to Sweden, who.
Sorry, one more thing to add on Finland.
Yeah.
If we're thinking that that they're not gonna completely roll over, then I think that on a game-to-game basis, there's going to be value on the under for Finland games, because if they're not rolling over, it means that Saros hasn't blown up, and it means that they are playing the games tight. And if that's the case, then I think that betting Finland unders could be the way to go in this tournament as well.
Yeah, and I think you'll have a lot of people saying that how could you bet unders when that blue line is so bad? But that also plays into it a lot, because there's going to be a lot more responsibility on the forwards to play responsibly in their own end, especially like it's a matchup nightmare. No matter who you're up against in this tournament, you're going to have a great line coming down on you. Those like forward groups are going to have to be very responsible. They're going to have to play more sheltered hockey. They're going to have to shelter that blue line. And it's also very hard to create offense when you don't have the ability from your defenseman in transition. They're going to have a tough time breaking out of their end. They're going to have a tough time, like, getting through the neutral zone, keeping the puck in the offensive zone, generating offense on the forecheck. So I do think the fact that their blue line is bad actually does play into these unders a little bit more too for these Finland games. So that's a good point for sure.
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm going to kind of say on top of that is kind of looking at these totals so far. These are the lowest totals of any team that's being posted, by a decent amount too, as you start to look at it. So it's like, I think we all kind of like went into this wanting to fade Finland, kind of wanting to bet their unders. Well, it seems like the market's kind of already out ahead of that one.
Yeah, Finland, Sweden, their second game. The total's already it's 5.5 minus 138 to the under. So definitely is expected to be a lower scoring team and lower scoring games. But we see that a lot in these tournaments where like it takes time for these forward lines to build chemistry, and it often does lead to a lot lower scoring games. So I think there's a reason for these totals being as low as they are. But yeah, we can get more into that later for sure. In terms of, before we move on to Sweden, there are like all these sort of futures markets here for them. Most tournament goals. I know Charles brought up an interesting point, which I wanted to touch on as well. I don't know if I can find the comment here, but it was something about how there's a lot of value in looks like there's a lot of value in some of these markets, top goal scorer team, etc., in such a quick format. I agree. In just 3 games, it's especially in what is going to be a lower scoring tournament. If there's like Finland scores like 5 goals in this tournament total in the 3 games, like any single one of those guys can be their leading goal scorer. It might only just take one, like dead heat rules apply, obviously. So like you might be looking at something where, you're not necessarily getting close to the payout that you bet into, but like one of these guys, like in the bottom 6 can get 2 goals and you're looking down the board, there could be a ton of value in someone like a Granlund or a Teravainen, who is like supposed to be playing on that top line. I mean, 14-1, 10-1 for Granlund. Yeah, definitely something I think that's worth looking into. Any of those guys jump out at you as guys you maybe want to take a flyer on?
Teravainen for sure.
Yeah,
I think
14-1 on the top line.
Yeah, on the top line.
Yeah, I would that like really jumps out of the page at me here.
Even a guy like Kakko, who's not going to be on the top line, but will be playing on a line with Hintz and Granlund, who are going to be like two of the more offensive guys. I think that's not going to be a typical third line that's going to be asked to play like a shutdown role. You're maybe going to have like Barkov, and honestly, maybe like the Barkov-Teravainen lines has to play a bit more shutdown, and that'll free up that Kakko-Hintz line to have some more offensive sort of minutes. And I mean, 16-1, I don't hate that either.
So the only thing about Kakko, and here's where I get to turn this all into things about the Rangers.
Oh boy.
Right? What you just touched on is interesting, and it is what Kakko's role was on the Rangers, right? He was on that third line for a while with Lafreniere and Hedl, two players that want to play very offensively. When he's been in that role, he's been just taking on a completely defensive shutdown role on that team. So while I kind of agree with the point of like, all right, he's going to be playing with these offensive players, there's going to be a shot. He's been in this role before. The two guys who are able to kind of push the pace a little bit more than he is. And he's kind of backed off a little bit more and deferred to them. So I think if I'm looking at one of the players down the roster, I'm looking at those two. I'm looking at those two, knowing that Capo is going to play a little more defensively, most likely in this role. So I'd be looking for, I think Hintz is kind of already priced a little bit too high here, but like maybe someone like Granlund is worth a little bit more of a look at this point than Kakko is for me.
Fair. There is something about getting that Rangers jersey off that just helps guys play a little bit lighter, though, I'd say. So maybe, maybe there's a little bit of a difference between Philippe Hedl and Rupe Hintz, but maybe that's just me. All right, let's move on to Sweden here. A team that, spoiler, I think all of us are actually pretty high on and see making some real noise in this tournament. I will start with you, Alber, here this time. Why are we all high on Sweden? Why are you high on Sweden at least? And we'll each kind of get our say here.
Definitely a deep forward group was kind of the first thing that stood out to me, especially kind of when you're looking down. It's like, all right, your third line is Jesper Bratt, Eriksson Ek, and Lucas Raymond. Like, that's really good. And even kind of that fourth line, look down there with Arvidsson and Lindholm. Obviously they should get pretty good goaltending back there from Gustafsson and Ullmark. I don't know. This team was a lot deeper than I necessarily realized going in. I don't really see any major holes here. And obviously, maybe Zibanejad can get William Nylander going a little bit in this tournament, and then they'll be even better up front. I do think this team is really deep. I think that they're going to be a problem, especially kind of in some of these prices that you're seeing against like the US and Canada, some of these bigger numbers. Like, I think they're very live in a couple of these spots here. I like the overall depth that Sweden has.
So money.
Yeah, what stands out with Sweden is their defense. That's a deep defense. That's a very talented defense. They're going to be a problem. I just don't know about how much scoring they can get throughout their lineup, right? But then again, we've mentioned before that it is a short tournament. You don't necessarily have to score all the goals in order to win this tournament, right? So they're going to get outstanding goaltending. We know that. They're going to get outstanding defensive play. We can be pretty sure of that. Then they don't have to score as many goals as the Canadians and the Americans will, right? So this is a team that is that's very dangerous, and it's a really complete team right now.
Yeah, it's the blue line that stands out to me too. Like, I do like the forward group. Obviously, like Albert was saying, it is a very good forward group. But I don't think it necessarily stands out over any of the other ones in this tournament. It's just you look at it and you're like, okay, these guys should be able to hang up front, especially with, you love what they have down the middle after Zibanejad. I don't know how I feel about Zibanejad being the 1C. Maybe like he puts on the Sweden jersey and, he plays like the player we've seen before. But the Pettersson and Eriksson Ek, just so good defensively. Just matchup nightmares where you can put him out there against basically anyone. And those lines should have success. But for me, it is the blue line that's behind them where, man, Hedman, Brodin, Ekholm, Dahlin, Anderson, these guys are unreal. The one concern I have is I think Erik Karlsson sucks at this point. Defensively, he's a nightmare. Obviously, he's still able to contribute offensively, but he's a shell of the player he once was. You would like to see them bring Forsling in. And I know Forsling was just, I think he missed practice with an illness. So we'll see what the pairings actually look like when all is said and done and who is the odd man out. If they make the choice to bench Karlsson, which I don't think they do just because he is a veteran and he's, been around, this might be his last tournament. If they make the decision to bench him for Forsling or for whoever they get in there. But if he's the odd guy out, I think this group is pretty flawless on the back end. Like that is a nasty blue line, and then obviously good goalies behind them. Really, really high ceiling for this Sweden team. They are being priced not honestly not all that far off in these games from like a Finland. They're right, like we'll see what we end up getting fully on these +1.5s on the money lines and stuff like that. But like they're going to be a very, very tough out on any given night because they have the center depth, they have the blue line, and they have the goaltending. Pretty well-rounded group, I would say. Any like of these future markets stand out for any of these Finland players? For me, I know I was looking at someone like Rickard Rakell, who's going to be on a line where I don't think the Mika and Nylander line is going to be asked to play any real defense. But that's definitely not how they would be deployed. You save Pettersson and Eriksson Ek in their lines for that. So I would expect that Rakell, Nylander, Mika line to play more of like an offensive sort of situations, and just Rakell being at 11-1, even Mika 11-1, where Mika should maybe play power play as well. Both those guys kind of stood out for me in that tournament goal scorer market for Sweden.
I think what stands out to me is that if you're going to have a top line of Forsberg, Pettersson, Kempe, I don't think that they're going to be relied upon as much to play defensively. I think you do leave that for the Eriksson Ek line. And if it is Pettersson in the top line, I'd like him to get the most points. He's going to get power play time. Is it true that Zibanejad is playing in the top unit and Pettersson in the second unit? He was in practice.
The first line was Nylander, Zibanejad, and Rakell. So I don't know if that's the first line or not, because like with Nylander there, you would expect it to be the first line, but like that Kempe, Pettersson, Forsberg line is like objectively a much better line.
So I think that you're going to have the goal scoring on that line come from Forsberg and Kempe. Theoretically, you do need that top line to be performing if Sweden's going to be doing anything. So that leaves Pettersson as the one who has shown the ability that he can feed guys who can drive play. So Pettersson as the top point scorer for Sweden stands out. I did see. I just want to make sure I got the pricing correct here. Yeah, so Pettersson as a top point scorer. I do like that.
Okay, Alber, any of those stand out to you, kind of, or?
I was actually looking for that market. I can't even find it. I just see goals. No, I think when you kind of look at this, I think the two lines are close enough that I do think the deployment and kind of time on ice is going to be rather even here. So I don't really see, we're kind of going back and forth between who's probably going to see more. I think it's going to be just so close in the end. I do kind of like we were talking about with Finland, right? Like I'd almost look down the board a little bit here, and it's like, all right, if you are seeing this pricing difference between that Pettersson, Forsberg, Kempe line and kind of that Mika, Rakell, Nylander line, yeah, I would tend to defer to that kind of Mika, Rakell line, especially when a few of those guys are going to be on power play one. Obviously, you see Nylander up at the top. Yeah, this is going to be the Rangers bias, but yeah, you already touched on Mika at 11-1. If he's going to be getting the most minutes at center potentially, and he's on that first power play, I think he's probably worth a look as someone that you kind of think is going to be put in a lot of those shooting positions. So yeah, that's certainly kind of the way I would look there. But no, I definitely do agree. Like on a game by game basis, this is a Sweden team I'm going to like a lot.
I look at some of these. There are three-way markets too, but the round robin head-to-head points markets up on FanDuel here, where you've got Sweden minus 165 over Finland. I know there is a potential for a tie, but with the point system, hopefully ties are a little bit less likely here, just because there is a much more wider array of points. I think Sweden minus 165 versus Finland is probably worth laying, and I don't hate taking a flyer on Sweden plus 220 over the US as well. Maybe that's controversial, and Alber and Charles and all the Americans in the chat can hate me for that. I'm not trying to shit on the U.S. team, but I just think there's potential for the Sweden team to surprise and earn themselves a place in the final too.
Yeah. No, I can totally see that. In like a tournament like this, you got to be careful because like we know who the top two teams are, right? Like we know that it's Canada and the U.S. So like most likely it's going to be them two in the finals, but you got to find value on the board, and I think that's where Sweden stands out.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to the meat here and these top two teams. A lot to talk about with the U.S. and Canada. We will start with the U.S. and I will start with you, So Money. Tell Alber why the U.S. is not going to win this tournament, in your opinion, unless you feel they might.
I mean, they could, right? But you have
all 4 teams could, you know.
You have Trocheck as your fourth line.
Finland cannot. Right now. Finland cannot. We're going to go out on a limb and say that one. Finland will not win this tournament. And
I think that Quinn Hughes taking him off that defense, it's devastating, right? It's I think KP nailed it. It's just you're losing a guy like that can drive play anytime he's on the ice, right? And he'll give you 30 minutes of play driving time, right? And that's you just can't replace that. They do have good pieces on that defense. I mean, like you can hear on the on the power play, is there a real big drop off between Quinn Hughes and Fox, right? So you can make that case. But on 5-on-5, there's a huge difference there, right? So I think recovering from the loss of Quinn Hughes is going to be tough. You have Trocheck as your fourth line center. That's probably could be controversial here, but including Finland, that's probably the worst fourth line of the tournament, right?
Yes.
And then you have we know that their goaltending is going to be solid, right? But we have also seen Hellebuck sometimes struggle on the big stage in the NHL, right? And Ottinger is at this point, he's kind of living off that Calgary series as well. So
I'm sorry, are we calling that fourth line worse than Sweden's?
Yes.
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
If Kreider plays.
You
can't just be like, all right, they got 2 Rangers, the worst than the one with 0 Rangers.
It's not about the Rangers, man. Like I'm not
from Moretto. It's a little bit about the Rangers for me, you know.
No, like for me, it's not at all, right? Like it's not because there's like Rangers there, right? Like Trocheck could be playing in Florida right now, right? And like it just, I just don't like that fourth line and how it's gonna. You need every line in this kind of tournament to have something that they can that they can provide you, whether it's going to be a shutdown situation or it's going to be a line that's going to drive play. So we know what lines we're getting from Canada, Sweden, and Finland. And like the top 3 lines for the US, we kind of know where each line slots in. What is going to be the role of that fourth line on the US right now? And I'm throwing that to you, Albert. Like what is the purpose of that fourth line right now? Are they going to be a defensive line or are they going to be a line that drives play? With those players right now,
they're gonna have to be a defensive line.
I don't think they can be.
You're not going. You can't rely. But you can't be relying. I mean, you're looking at the other lines. You can't be relying on them for offense. Like that would just be insane. And I do agree. I think where you're going to go with this is say that JT Miller line is kind of going to be the defensive line.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, what else you're not throwing out Trocheck, Nelson, and Larkin if you're looking for scoring. When you look at Matthews and Hughes and Connor, Kachuk, etc.
So then you trust that.
I think it's going to be like. I think it's going to be what rest of the fourth lines are. Like I don't think you're like relying on them for heavy minutes. I don't think that's what it's going to be. So I do think you're relying on them for some defensive minutes, but like I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me to tournament this short if like all these coaches maybe cut the benches a little bit and went very top 6, top 9 heavy.
Yeah.
And that would definitely favor a team like the US, I think. In which, there is a substantial drop off between the 3rd and 4th, but like that 4th line's still better than Sweden. That 4th line's better than Finland still.
I think the thing for me is that their 4th line doesn't have an identity, and honestly, a lot of their forward groups they have a lot of guys who are very similar players. They don't have guys that fill roles more so. It's more just like you put imagine that 4th line if you had Tage Thompson on there instead of Trocheck, and like how that kind of changes things a little bit. It just, to me, it's like you look at a team like Finland, even with Lundell, Luosterainen, and Armia. okay, yeah, sure. Like, I'm not necessarily saying those are 3 better players than the 3 players that the Islanders have on their line, but like, that's a line that you know is going to go out there and be insanely defensively responsible. Like, all 3 of those guys are better defensive forwards than the 3 guys on the U.S. fourth line. Sweden, you have Eriksson Ek that can play that defensive role. Even Lindholm, Nyquist, and Arvidsson are very responsible forwards in their own end. Like, they have identity in these bottom sixes where they're going to go out there and they're going to like be able to, kind of deploy guys accordingly. I don't think the U.S. has that option whatsoever, and I think that's ultimately going to be their downfall in this tournament, where it's just not a very well-rounded forward group. It's more just like you're putting guys out there and hoping they're not losing their minutes, because you obviously have some nasty lines up top, but like, where's the guys like, where's your Eriksson Ek? Where's your Lundell Luostarinen duo? Where's your like Sorelli Hagel? You don't have that, and I think that that's where ultimately I see the biggest weakness for this U.S. team. And you talk about Hellebuck, I mean, best goalie in the NHL right now, but I would be terrified if I was a Jets fan to have him come in and have to be in this tournament as he's rolling and playing like some of the best hockey of his career, maybe. Like, there's just, the downside is just like, I mean, the upside is he just keeps playing as good as he's been playing, and like, whatever, nothing happens, nothing changes. But man, you got to be scared, like going up there with the offensive talent in this tournament and like kind of changing things up, changing his routine, all that sort of stuff. You want nothing to fuck with him right now, because like you said, he has struggled a little bit on the big stage before. I'm interested to see how that kind of plays out as well.
So I think if the point you want to make about the U.S. is that they are the most reliant team in this tournament on their top 6 forwards, I'd agree with you, because I do think there is a substantial drop off there, more so than some of these other teams. At the same time, I do think they have the defensive depth and the goaltending to kind of make up for that. And we've already touched on, in such a short tournament, if they do start to maybe cut the bench a little bit and just rely on that top 6 a little more, I think US can play with anybody. Now, if they try to get into this, we're just going to roll all 4 lines thing, I don't think that's going to suit them very well. But I mean, this tournament's going to be 3, 4, 5, whatever games, and you're done. Like, yeah, I think there's an opportunity for them to do that. So I don't know. I am curious kind of how they do that. But if they do kind of cut it and just rely on that top 6, like, that top 6 can line up with legitimately anybody.
Yes, it can. It's still different, I would say, than Canada's top 6, though, where like you still have a lot of guys who are just offensively driven, and don't necessarily have that same sort of responsible defensively sort of mindset. Like guys that, like you look at like even like a guy like Reinhardt, who's like scores a ton of goals, Mark Stone, who scores a ton of goals. These are guys going to play top 6 minutes. These are also guys who like can legitimately go out there and be shut down guys too. Like, they're very versatile forwards. The U.S. has unbelievable offensive talent in that top 6. Like, I don't think no one can dispute that. I mean, between like Connor, Gensel, Matthews, Hughes, Tkachuk, Eichel, like the amount of goals in that top 6 are unbelievable, but they're all, to an extent, not to put them all in the same bucket, but there's a lot of very similar players there that have very similar skill sets. And I think that is my biggest qualm with this U.S. team. It's not to like downplay the talent that they have. It's just to say that like they don't necessarily have the same versatility maybe as other teams.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree with that, and like you like nailed it with the identity of the lines, right? Like, you need to develop like what is going to be the role of these lines, and I agree with Alber too that like they are the most reliant on their top 6, and I think that goes without saying. Like, you look at the way that the roster's composed here. If a couple of those guys in the top 6 are not going in these 3 games or in these 4 games, then they're done. Like, they don't have the goal scoring to make up for like if like Gensel's not scoring, or if Austin Matthews is not going.
If Matthews doesn't score, they're toast.
Yeah,
I guess. But I mean, like, honestly, if Matthews isn't scoring, like, Gensel could pop 4 in, Connor can pop 5 in. Like, I don't necessarily think that'll be. It's just like, can these guys match up? Can they get enough minutes up and down the lineup where like guys aren't getting hemmed in their own end, sort of, and able to, like, again, obviously losing Hughes, like not being able to have that same play driving to the back end. Like, I don't think Hannafin is very good. I think Hannafin is a bit of a weak spot for them there. I almost think that maybe you could argue that Sanderson should get in there over Hannafin. Like defensively, Hannafin is really not having his best season. I mean, he hasn't kind of been playing at a high level defensively for a while now. And just kind of looking at what this team needs and what this team has back there, like obviously what Werenski is able to do and Fox are able to do offensively and driving those offensive minutes, I think it almost makes more sense for them to have Sanderson playing minutes back there than it does Hannafin. And that's someone who maybe despises the Sens a little bit and how much they talk up Sanderson. But like he is a good player, and I think he serves a little bit more of a purpose for this team too. Yeah, he is. He is.
Don't let your Sens bias cloud your judgment here. Sanderson's outstanding.
No, I think he should. I think he should probably be in that top 6 right now. I think he should be playing for this team in their first game for sure. But like again, the thing with this U.S. team at the same time is like they could throw any of those 3 goalies in there and win any given game just on the strength of that goaltending alone. So that's obviously massive.
Edge, and they'll have the defensive edge against basically everybody.
They won't have the defensive edge against Canada.
Yes, they do.
No.
The U.S. defense against Canada?
No. Yes, they do. Yes,
no, I don't think so.
Not without Hughes.
I don't think so. Stop. Yeah, not without Hughes.
I think without Hughes.
With Hughes, yeah, for sure.
With Hughes, they do. Yes, with Hughes, they definitely do. I mean, Hughes is also maybe one of the best, if not the best defenseman in the league. He's up there. He's top 3, whatever. But yeah, you lose him, and like I really like Brock Faber. Like I like Brock Faber a lot. Like I think like the gap between Theodore and Hannafin on that third pairing is big. Doughty and Faber, you could say like I think you can kind of call that a wash, whatever. Parayko, maybe a little bit of a weaker link. But like that top pair of Makar and Taves is nasty. Like I don't think you can say that the US has the edge. Like I don't see it. I'm not saying that no chance, but like, I just don't see it.
I am saying no chance without Hughes.
Yeah. I think Hannafin is I think we're not talking enough about Hannafin being a bit of a weaker spot on that blue line too.
Yeah. So like one play, it does stand out for me. Now again, I'm gonna pick up a lot of hate for this, and like I'm not saying that the US cannot win this tournament. They absolutely can, right? What I'm saying is that we need to find value on the board in like a short tournament. I'm not betting US at like plus 110 to make the finals, right? Like that kind of stuff doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. US plays Finland in their first game, correct? So yes. If Finland has trouble with their defense, I think we're going to see that manifest itself in like the second and third games, right? I think the first game they can hang in there. So one play that does stand out is US to have exactly 2 points in the round robin, and that's 19-1, right? If Finland is able to hang with the US, maybe even win a game in overtime, I don't know, right? I think that exactly it's going to be tougher for US moving forward against Sweden and Canada in their final 2 games. So if I think that Finland is going to be feisty, then we're going to see it. It's going to be pretty apparent in the first game, and so I think US at exactly 2 points. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, even 1 point, 25-1. Those are big numbers for what is going to be a very tight tournament, very thin margins. I mean, you can definitely see that at a much, much bigger number there. I mean, obviously it's likely not to happen, but like you're getting 19-1 and 23-1 on those for them to just go 1-2 would be lose one game in regulation and lose the other 2 in overtime, or I don't mind that at all. I don't mind that at all. Yeah. All right. Let's sounds good.
That's not the case at all.
It's nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that at all. I promise you, it has nothing to do
Charles,
with that.
It's exactly like that.
Let's get on to the greatest hockey nation the world has ever seen. And that
I didn't know Russia was in this tournament.
Okay. Let's talk about the Canadian team here, who I will let Alber go first here because I let so many poke.
No, you got to go first on this one. No, you get to go first on this one.
I'll gladly go first on this. I was going to give you the field first quickly to try and poke holes in the Canadian title defense here. But
don't worry, I'll poke holes.
Okay, you can poke holes later. So this is a Canada team where right now on FanDuel plus 145. I think that is not short enough still.
Trash.
I mean, okay, sure. Trash. Yes, they suck. This is the most well-rounded team. Goaltending is obviously the big concern here and a big question mark. It's not like their goaltending is terrible, though. It's not like they're trotting out like Justice and Noonan or something like that. They still have goalies who are capable of playing well enough with considering the team in front of them to for them to have no issues in this tournament. Obviously, there's maybe some blow-up potential there, but like Hill's fine, Binnington's fine, Montembeault won't see the ice at all, so it doesn't really matter. I just don't see a weakness on this team up front, especially, and on the back end too. We talk about the blue line. Maybe you can call it almost at best a wash with the U.S. Totally fair, whatever. But you have the familiarity of the top pair between Taves and Makar. You got, a guy in Morrissey who's playing incredible hockey right now. Theodore's been awesome. Getting Doughty back in Canada, like Doughty's, we all know what Doughty is. Let's see what he can be after missing a lot of the season. We'll see. But like up front is where it all comes together for Canada. And you look at that top six, I mean, it speaks for itself. I don't think there's, you need to add much in there. We know what they're capable of offensively, what they're capable of defensively, just like some of the best, most responsible, most dynamic players in the league. And then what you like to kind of hang your hat on for this Canada team, I would say, is this bottom six. This is where it all sort of comes together. Point, Cirelli, Hagel, Bennett, like whether it's Jarvis or Konechny, and Marchand, what he does when he puts that Canada jersey on. This bottom six is unbelievable. I think that in a tournament where it's going to be very fine margins and you're kind of splitting hairs to find differences between a lot of these teams and a lot of these games, being able to put those get that fourth line, you're basically going to put up against anyone's top line. You're just going to ask Cirelli and Hagel to go out there and do what they've done all season, which is just shut down the other team's top players, and that's going to free up the other lines to do their thing. In a tournament where the margins are so fine and so thin, having that huge edge in their bottom six is going to be the difference for me ultimately. As long as the goaltending doesn't blow up, which I'm pretty comfortable in that it won't, I think Canada has closer to a 50% chance to win this tournament, whereas right now they're kind of being priced around like the plus 145 range. Honestly, I know it's like maybe they are the chalk at this point. They weren't before. There were better numbers before when the Hughes stuff, obviously the Hughes announcement changed it a little bit. But for me, Canada plus 145 is still probably the best value bet on this futures board. And I know maybe it sounds biased and I'm Canadian and whatever. I'm not one of those guys who's just going to sit here and just bang the Canada drum. And joking aside, I care much more about the Habs than I care about Canada winning these tournaments. But to me, this is still the best team by a little bit more of a margin than the market is pricing it as. I don't know. So, Manny, how do you feel about this?
I think it's fair to say that if Saros doesn't blow up, Canada has the worst goaltending, right? Mm-hmm. It is a concern, especially because, obviously I would have liked to see Logan Thompson there. And I hope there's nothing like the reason he wasn't on was because of the Pete DeBoer stuff. I hope that's not what the reasons were, because if that's the case, then that would be really disappointing. We talk about the identity of the lines. One problem I do have with Canada is that I don't really agree with Mark Stone playing on the second line. I think that you can flip him and Brad Marchand Marchand, Crosby, McKinnon would be a better fit, in my opinion, than have Stone in there. Stone is not the same player that he was. And also I don't know where he, in terms of identity of that second line, I don't know where he slots in with Crosby and McKinnon, right? There was a comment in the chat about Canada not having triggermen, right? Possibly. I think that if you have Marchand, Crosby, and McKinnon in that second line, we know exactly the role of each guy. You have Reinhart, McDavid, Marner in that first line. We know the role of each guy, right? And then you have Cirelli, who's going to be who's going to take on the defensive responsibility. Even though he's slated in the fourth line, I think that he's going to probably see a lot more minutes than a usual fourth liner would, especially if Canada is playing with the lead. So I do like the way that this team is made. I do like obviously you have the familiarity of the Taze Makar there in your top pairing. I think that we talked about. I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but I know off the show we talked about that this tournament rejuvenates a few of these guys. I think one guy that stands out in this case would be Drew Doughty. Obviously, he's not the same player that he was in previous tournaments, but we know this is his last tournament. We know the pedigree that he has, and I think that he's not going to be in this tournament, in a short tournament, he's not, and with the rest he's had to like recover this year, I don't think he's going to be your typical third pairing defenseman in this tournament, and he's the reason why I was saying that without Hughes, Canada has by far the best defense in this tournament. You can make a case for Sweden. Absolutely, Sweden's defense is right up there. But for me, Drew Doughty is the one that, if he's not your typical third pairing defenseman in this tournament, which I don't think he is, I think he's the one that pushes them over the top.
I'm so happy he's there. I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy for Canada that he's there right now. Alber, poke holes. Since you wanted to poke holes in this team.
I'll do my best to poke holes. We already kind of talked about defensively. I still think the U.S. is a little better back there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. We'll find out. The goaltending thing, we don't really need to talk about that. It is what it is. Like they may not be good. And in a tournament, especially where we think the margins are going to be so small, it may only take 1 week goal. So it's not like it's going to take a whole lot over a large season where like, yeah, these two are both very good goalies over a large sample. It's not going to take much, right? So it's like it kind of works both ways, because I do think obviously they're going to be more likely to kind of let in a week one, but at the same time, like if it only takes one, okay, Hellebuck could very easily let in a week goal too, right? Like we've seen him kind of go through, have those stretches at least. I think the tough part for me, and kind of when we analyze this tournament, especially kind of when you're talking about like the depth of Canada, right, is, which they are incredibly deep, like certainly not going to argue that. It's, if I'm the U.S. and I'm going up against Canada, every shift I see Hagel, Cirelli, and Bennett on the ice means I'm not dealing with McDavid, and it means I'm not dealing with McKinnon. And for me, that's a win. So it's like, I think what I'm trying to get the most out of, especially these early couple of games, is how much are they going to tighten benches in these games? Knowing that this tournament is so short, when you get into these, like, are they going to start riding these top players 24, 25 plus minutes a night? Or is this going to be a lot more kind of evenly rotated? Because I do think kind of when we look at Canada versus the US, I could see this happening. I could see them like handling it exactly the opposite, where I think the US may want to lean a little bit more on their top six, being that there is such a gap there. It wouldn't surprise me if Canada kind of evened out the time on ice a little bit more here. So I don't know. That's kind of what I don't think they have
any reason to shorten their bench. Like, I don't think you look at any of those lines and get concerned. You're not worried about them losing their mid. Like even like Cirelli, Hagel, that Cirelli, Hagel, Bennett trio. I don't think like you are comfortable putting them out there against any other trio in this tournament and being like, yeah, we're going to be okay here.
I agree. I'm just kind of looking at it from the side of like, if I'm another team playing Canada and they are going to do that, again, every shift I see Anthony Cirelli on the ice, and I love Anthony Cirelli. Like, don't take me wrong on that one. But it's like him being on the ice means I'm not seeing McDavid and I'm not seeing McKinnon. And I'm happy with that, especially in a tournament like this that is going to be so short, where it's like, okay, if they want to, they could very easily just ride those top two lines 26 minutes a night probably and just run them into the ground. Like, I don't know. That's where I kind of see the difference between them and like a US or a Sweden is like, yeah, if you're getting those top lines matched up against the other team's bottom six a lot of these times, like, yeah, that's where the Canadian big edge comes in. But if they're just going to roll out and like, if this Cirelli line's playing 15 minutes a night, 16 minutes a night, like pretty even, I think that's a big edge for other teams. So to make a long story short, like I think what I'm most interested to kind of see is how these teams start to deploy these lines as this tournament goes.
Do you want to lock in a head-to-head? Canada, USA?
No, because I do think Canada's better.
Really protecting that head-to-head record, eh? Really protecting that. He's not going to give us anything unless we we're going to need to give him a real tasty one to let him lock in another one. He's going to protect that to the end of time.
I definitely do think. I mean, Canada's better. Like I'd be an idiot to kind of say otherwise. Jokes aside, it just come down to like, again, how much is Canada going to roll with these top guys, and is the goaltending going to hold up? And against the U.S., like they're just so reliant on those top six that I do agree, kind of having that fourth line. Like, I just don't really like the matchup in a game where I kind of look at the U.S. versus Canada, right? Because like I look at it, and if Canada gets out to a lead, all right, then you run those third and fourth lines into the ground and just kind of hold the Americans back a little bit. Where it's like, all right, if the U.S. gets out and they get up 2-0, well, it's like, you know what? Now you're going to like just kind of thinking about how the U.S. will handle that. All right, you're going to start seeing a lot of Miller and Brady Tkachuk going out there, and sure, they're great, but then you're just going to see McDavid and McKinnon every other shift. So it's like, I just don't love the matchup as far as those two teams head to head against each other. No.
All right, Charles, we're down. Me and So Money against Charles, Jordan, all you guys in the chat, all these Americans in the chat who don't want to back down and want to support their country. Good to know that patriotism is not dead in the U.S., despite what we may be seeing here on screen. So nice to know Americans still fight back.
Can we get a price on the anthem being booed before that game in Montreal?
We got it. I hope it's not. I hope none of these anthems are booed. We got a comment from Zach in the chat as well. My argument is that we're acting like Canada's goalies are bad. They're not bad. They're just not as good as other goalies. Yeah, I completely agree with that as well.
Okay.
It's not agree. Like you still have guys
logic,
who are
nobody in this whole tournament's bad.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Like, these are the best guys. You know what? Him and Elias Pettersson are going to share like some JT Miller stories, and they're going to bond, and it's going to be great. Zibanejad is back. And you talk about guys like playing for the country. Mika Zibanejad's right at the top of that list.
We got some other comments here. McDavid to score a goal in a hockey game at plus 230 is wild to me.
Yeah, that's
hat-trick as well. Yeah, completely agree, Charles. That is a very good look. I like Reinhart anything, or I liked Reinhart anything that has been priced, that has been bet down considerably since he was put onto that line with Marner and McDavid. I mean, I don't care. Sam Reinhart, one of the best goal scorers in the NHL. They could have put, I don't even care. They could have put like, Hedl or someone on that line. And I'd still, if you have McDavid and Marner feeding you pucks, I'm probably going to bet on you to score a goal. And,
how do you get Hedl as the random guy you're thinking
honestly,
about? Hedl's not even Canadian.
I just drew a blank. I suck at face, and I was just like, whatever. You talked about him so much.
You're always thinking about
he's ingrained into my mind on this show now at this point. But yeah,
I get it. I always think about Rangers and ex-Rangers too.
You could put Jimmy Vesey there. I know he's American, but I'm just saying,
I always think about Rangers and ex-Rangers too. I get it.
I think Reinhardt stuff is like obviously good. But yeah, it has been priced down a little bit. Crosby, 33-1. Narrative writes itself for tournament MVP. Yeah, definitely can see that as well. Did you guys make?
I love how your thoughts of two random MVPs? Canadians that you could put on the top line are Philip Hedl and Jimmy Vesey. Neither of whom is Canadian.
Brutal. Jake Evans. There you go. Did anyone bet any MVPs here or no?
I haven't betted yet, but I do like. I really do like the Crosby one. I think. I do like the Crosby one. I do like Raquel as well. I know he's like a real big long shot here, but if this tournament comes down to Sweden, Canada, I think that there's some Swedish guys there that have some value on the board as well.
Yeah, I would agree that there's probably some Swedish guys down the board. I don't hate the idea of Brandon Hagel at 100-1. I mean, like maybe one of the most underrated guys. I know he's going to be playing a lot of defensive minutes, but like how many shorthanded goals have Andy Cirelli been on the ice for this year too? Like it's not like they're not capable of scoring in those defensive minutes. I think I can't remember it was a tweet that came. It was like in January. Dom Filipovic tweeted out that like they were winning. Cirelli and Hagel were winning their shorthanded minutes this season, like 6-3 or something like that, and that was by like in mid-January, early January. Just insane. I think Hagel at 100-1 is worth a little bit of a flyer, and I know he's not having a good season. He's not anywhere close to the same player as he once was, but yeah, I think Brad Marchand, 85-1. One of those guys who maybe just elevates things a little bit when the games are like this. And again, like we talked about in the game, it's going to be such a small sample size. It's not going to take a whole lot for, if Marchand's able to grab a couple goals and some big timely goals, it's not going to take a whole lot for someone like that to win MVP at 85-1. And obviously Reinhart, who I just talked about, at 31-1 here. I think Reinhardt's in a good position to rack up goals in this tournament. I think he could have like 4 or 5, obviously on the top power play, and playing on a line where he's probably going to be the focal point shooter. Yeah, he will be the focal point shooter with McDavid and Marner. I think there's potential for Reinhardt to, even in a small tournament, a short tournament, a potential for him to really rack up goals. If Sweden wins, probably would want to go with goalie as MVP. Yeah, definitely a good look. Do we have confirmation as to who the starter is for Sweden? I think it's going to be Omar, but do we know?
It's not confirmed. They're practicing today, so we'll have a better idea there. But I thought they go with Gustafsson.
Maybe, yeah.
It's 75-1.
Yeah. I like that as well. I definitely do like that as well. I do think if you're going to try and back some Swedish guys, I think that's a decent look. And you're obviously going to get a much bigger number than you will if you're trying to back like someone like a Nylander who's 27-1. Obviously, yeah. It goes without saying. I think that's a good point, Mike. That if they're going to win this tournament, it's going to be probably on the back of tight defensive hockey. They're going to ride that blue line and those goalies to success. So I think those are some bigger numbers. Did you find a number on Olmark too? Is he?
Olmark was 110-1, I think.
Yeah, 110-1. So, I mean, definitely some guys worth the Flyers there as well. All right, let's give our final predictions here for this tournament. 1, 2, 3, 4 standings, and then your finals prediction. And you know what? Let's say you have to give an MVP as well here. Alber, I will start with you.
I do think Canada wins in the end. I think those top players that they have are just going to be too much in the end. The ability, especially like they have 2 lines worth of legitimate like top end superstars, which I just don't even think the US is really going to be able to match up with in the end. So I'll take Canada. I mean, I'll just go chalky here. Unfortunately, I don't. Unless I missed one, I don't think there are any Rangers on Canada. No, I'll go Canada over the US. And Canada's the team where I do think if they win, the MVP is from the top of the board. You said it already. I'll go Sam Reinhart.
Okay. Took my MVP. I will pivot. So money.
Yeah, I think in a tournament like this, you don't have time to figure out where you slot in. I think Canada's in the best position to quickly know the role of each player. That puts them at number 1 for me, Sweden number 2, US number 3, Finland number 4, and the tournament MVP go with Nathan MacKinnon.
Okay, Nathan MacKinnon 10-1 right now. I will say Canada over Sweden in the final. I do like Reinhart, but I will just to have a different pick here. I will go with Hagel. I'll go with Hagel 100-1 as a dark horse for MVP. All right, that'll do it for this special Four Nations preview here on Edgework. We will not be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern like we usually are. We will be back next Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, where we will have a full futures breakdown. We will also recap the round robin. The round robin finishes on Monday night, I believe. So all the games will be done. We will know the finals by then. We will talk about what happened in these 6 games. We will break down the final, give our thoughts and our predictions, and we will also dive into a bunch of futures, division, playoff, Stanley Cup stuff, award stuff, a big futures look before we get into the final push here in the NHL season. So appreciate everyone for tuning in today. If you guys can like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, it would go a long way in helping us out. We would appreciate it. Yeah, we will be back next Tuesday. Until then, enjoy these games and good luck on your bets.